Jesus at the center of it all. Jesus at the center of it all. From beginning to the end, it will always be. It's always been you, Jesus. Jesus, nothing else matters. Nothing in this world will do. Jesus, you're the center, and everything revolves around you. Jesus, you at the center of it all. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. My chains are gone, I've been set free. My God, my Savior has ransomed me. And like a flood, His mercy reigns, unending love, amazing grace. What a merciful, merciful Savior. What a merciful, merciful God. What a merciful, merciful Savior. What a merciful, merciful God.
Luke 24. I wanted to read a portion of it and then just share a brief story with you guys as an encouragement for today. Starting in verse 13 of Luke 24. Now that same day, 2 of them were on their way to a village called Emmaus, which was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Together, they were discussing everything that had taken place, and while they were discussing and arguing, Jesus himself came near and began to walk along with them. But they were prevented from recognizing him. Then he asked them, "What is this dispute that you're having with each other as you're walking?" And they stopped walking and looked discouraged. The one named Cleopas answered him, "Are you the only visitor in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that happen there in these days?" "What things?" he asked them. So they said to him, "The things concerning Jesus of Nazareth, who was a prophet, powerful in action and speech before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. But we were hoping that he was the one who was about to redeem Israel. Besides all this, it's the 3rd day since these things happened. Moreover, some women from our group astounded us. They arrived early at the tomb, and when they didn't find his body, they came and reported that they had seen a vision of angels who said he was alive. Some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just as the women had said, but they didn't see him." He, Jesus, said to them, "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Wasn't it necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things and enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he interpreted for them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. Wow. Verse 28. They came near the village where they were going, and he gave the impression that he was going farther. But they urged him, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening, and now the day is almost over." So he went in to stay with them. It was as he reclined at the table with them that he took the bread, blessed it, and broke it, and gave it to them. Then their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, but he disappeared from their sight. They said to each other, "Weren't our hearts burning within us while he was talking with us on the road and explaining the scriptures to us?" That very hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem. They found the 11 and those with them gathered together, who said, "The Lord has truly been raised and has appeared to Simon." Then they began to describe what had happened on the road and how he was made known to them in the breaking of the bread. A couple years ago, I was working with survivors of human trafficking and had been a part of the rescue of a young woman who I had gotten to know, and we began studying the Bible together. She had never been to church. She had never heard the gospel, and she was really young and interested in something that offered some hope in the midst of the darkness that she'd experienced in the world and the brokenness that she'd seen. And so we began to read the book of Luke. And I told her to just read as much as she could the first time that we met, and that we'd talk about it the second time. Well, the next week, I walked into the restaurant where we were meeting, and she was sitting at the table with her Bible open to Luke 24, and she had finished the whole gospel. And I sat down across from her and I said, "Hey, what do you think? What's going on?" And she had this puzzled look on her face, this kind of shocked expression. And she said, "Miss Glory, these people are crazy." And I was a little confused about what she was talking about. And I said, "What do you mean? You talking about Jesus?" And she said, "No, these people are crazy. They're out here running around in the dark." And the first night I had met her, she had run away from her trafficker barefoot in the dark one night and had found her freedom herself by calling for help and being brave enough to do that. And she was astonished that Jesus's disciples would go running back into the darkness by choice. And as we sat and talked about why they went back into the darkness, all the way back to Jerusalem, she began to really listen and to nod her head. And I told her that it was because they had seen Jesus themselves for who he really was. They had really seen the resurrection firsthand, and that was enough. That if Jesus was alive, that was all that they needed. And it wasn't because they were better than other people. They hadn't even believed the women, and they hadn't believed the others. They had left the city. By all accounts, their hopes were completely crushed. But Jesus was alive, and they knew it now firsthand because he had shown himself to them. And that was enough. And they went running back into the darkness. And those roads back then were not safe. There weren't street lights. There weren't cars with headlights, and there were robbers on the roads. But they ran 7 miles that night back to Jerusalem to tell their friends that Jesus was alive. And I've just been thinking about this week, about the message Sunday, and what it means for us to practice new creation living together as a body. And one of the things that I've been convicted of in my own life is that there are places of real darkness in my own heart and in the lives of people around me and in the lives of my neighbors and in our community and in the prisons and jails and strip clubs and motels around us, where there is real darkness and there are real threats. But Jesus is alive. And I have the privilege of having seen the real Jesus, not with my eyes, but in his book and through his spirit. I have borne witness to him. And as someone who has borne witness, we all have borne witness to him as believers. And our call is to run and to tell that good news to others. And it doesn't mean it's not still dark outside. It doesn't mean that it's not hard. It doesn't mean that we might not trip on the way. But Jesus is worth it the good news is worth it. And that young woman that I know who first kind of brought this passage to light for me, she said, I want to be good enough friends with Jesus that I'd go running around in the dark for him. And I prayed that prayer for the last couple of years, and especially at Easter, that I'd be good enough friends with Jesus and that he would be a good enough friend to me, that I'd go running around in the dark for him. And so I've just been praying that for us, that we would be good enough friends with Jesus, that we'd be close enough to him, that we'd really see and experience the resurrection in tangible enough ways that would take us into dark places with the hope of Jesus, that he is alive. So may you have a blessed day. I love you very much.